Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming online or watching this in delayed. Right, today we're going to talk through the new grading system. So that's a purpose today. There's lots of change and lots of things happening, but today we'll just go through and help ensure a good level of understanding of squash levels. So firstly, we acknowledge it's a really significant change in we know that not everyone will like the change, and we also acknowledge that not everyone necessarily will suit the change. Today, what we want to go through is why we've made the changes, what has changed, and then we're going to have plenty of time for you to ask questions with the chat function that we have. We are recording this, so please make all comments and questions respectful and specific to what you want to know more information on. So noting this slide, and we've got our theme is let's build a future of squash together. We've got really 5 significant shifts in the sport. So the first one was bringing back New Zealand Squash Open, which we did in 2022. And again in 2023, and that's obviously been a really successful one. We've got these 4 as well. So we introduced My Squash, which is partly released last month and will be fully released in 2025. We are looking at how we I guess our affiliation model, or how we sort of fund squash in sport. And also we're spending a lot of time on our facilities as well. We're actually releasing the Club Uplift tomorrow. But today is about the grading system. It's really important that we do make these changes. You know, we are about sort of future-proofing the sport. We've got a great product. We know we've got a great sport, but we need to evolve to remain strong, and we need to evolve to make sure that we're applicable and suitable for the future generations, and we also protect what our point of difference and strengths are as well. Thanks, John. So the format for today is we're going to try to keep our talking to a maximum of 25 minutes. We'll keep an eye on that, and we may not even get that long. And really what we did one of these webinars last pre-Christmas, and really the richness of the questions is where it's best. So we will spend a lot of time. We will cap this to 7 o'clock. We'll just keep going for that. We are going to, well, we obviously are recording it, and we are going to post this. So it's not just for you that's online, it's for those that will watch it delayed as well. 2 special guests, or 2 people that are going to be probably doing the majority of the talking, which is John Fletcher, our Squash New Zealand Poipātū Aotearoa National Development Manager, who has worked incredibly hard to bring this to life in My Squash, and it's working very closely with SquashLevels, but also with our developers at iSquash, with also the new company that's developed My Squash. And yeah, been amazing, and there's been a heck of a lot of work, and there's still a lot of work, as we'll discuss today, to fine tune. And also Jackie. So Jackie, not too recent, a gold medalist from Commonwealth Games with Joelle, who's online, and she's full-time and now based in New Zealand, working for SquashLevels, and so she'll be able to really answer any detailed specific question, which I'm sure some of you will have. So that's our plan. So note the chat function up the top. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the online tools. We won't take questions yet because we want to talk through the high level, and then a lot of the questions may be redundant. So we'll give you the cue to start typing in the questions. Thanks, John. So what's the problem? Why did we change, or is there a problem? So note that our grading system is almost 50 years old or not. I've just got an echo there, John. I'm not sure if you can help me on that.
Yep, I'm on it.
Yep, going.
You're right.
Thanks. So really the main problem is that the grading system has a lot of inequalities, and most of you are probably, to be fair, aware of this. So firstly, across regions, we know that some regions are either over or undergraded compared to others. And we see that in some super champs. and we do get some districts and some areas in New Zealand that do very, very well, and partly is because of the inequality of our grading. Age groups as well, whether it's junior, senior, or masters, and I know I played actually only masters last year and did particularly well on my points. It's slightly overgraded. I know that. Gender matchups, and this has been a significant sort of challenge for us over the years and years. So I've been in the role for 3 years, and there's been so much feedback in that time, and also change. And we know that there's been sort of changes to some of the points and grading to try to line that up. Also, junior development. Our grading system is not great in regards to really tracking the progress and development of our juniors, especially if they keep playing each other and going up and going down, going up and going down. And overall, yeah, it's not a great overall assessment of our playing level. So we know this because every year we get a lot of complaints, and every year Squash New Zealand, Poipātū, Aotearoa has really looked at reviewing and tweaking the system for years and years and decades. Thank you. So the next is what has changed, and we'll go through specific sort of questions today. I guess the big one is that it's not outcome based. It's not whether you win or lose, you go up or down. It's a lot more based on performance. What you will notice or have noticed if you've started playing, it's a lot more dynamic. So the shifts are more dynamic than what we've had with our previous system. The big one, and I guess one message I want you to hear, is that no longer we have points. It's not points, and really that's not a word that we should be using. My analogy, it's like the points or our previous system, it's like having a treasure chest. And every time you sort of win some points, you build up your treasure chest with gold coins, and you really protect them. You know, they're hard earned. And sometimes you lose and you give out your gold coins and it hurts, but you're really proud and you're really protective of your points. That has gone. So we have taken away, and we acknowledge that it's a significant shift, but the point system has gone. There's no more treasure chests. It's now based on a ratio or comparing you to others in a playing form, and it's a level. So now it's a level of how you are playing, and that's a significant sort of shift. And it is an algorithm. If you're interested, we can give you a lot more information. It is maths. It's weighted on matches. So if you play a competition versus an interclub, and in future we will be able to have sort of social leagues as well, they are weighted differently. And there is a significant part of behavioral modeling as well. So it does predict human behaviors when people are sort of matched differently. So we can get into the specifics shortly. Thanks, John. So why change? Well, a lot of it is because of removing inequalities. The SquashLevels is a very accurate rating system. It accurately measures your playing level, and it's fair, and it's going to really help us in regards to seeding and to I guess understand the different levels of different players. And it is a lot more reflective, a lot more dynamic than what we've had in the past. In future, also, we will introduce SquashLevels to social players, non-members, not graded, but SquashLevels. One of the big things that we know from an insights point of view is that people want to find other players of similar ability, not club members or those that want to play in the club, those that just casually pay to play. They want to find someone who's similar ability and match that up. And obviously, as we're probably all aware, it aligns up with other nations as well. It is a really good system. The whole world will be following SquashLevels, and already most of Europe, Australia, around the world are sort of picking this up. So we don't want to be left behind either. But for me, a lot of it is it's a lot more accurate, and it will sort of help the casual market as well as be a fairer system for our graded players too. So that's probably, I think, me, isn't it, John? A little bit of the why. So do you want to go through a little bit of the complexity behind the scenes of this?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, there's a little bit of complexity, but I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. as you can see, these are slides that we've sort of had out since last year, but I'll just sort of refresh for everyone. So obviously we're bringing 3 systems together this year. We've got iSquash, which is where people are entering tournaments, viewing their draws, viewing into club. So essentially it's operating as a competition-only platform for this year. All these results, once they're entered into iSquash, get sent through to SquashLevels, and SquashLevels processes all those. Everyone has a profile that's automatically created in SquashLevels and gives everyone their level after their matches have been played. There are options if people want to upgrade their subscriptions in SquashLevels, but that's completely up to them. And there is a free 3-month gold trial, and Jackie will touch on this as well. But if anyone has any questions about how levels are changing after a match, that's the perfect place to go and find out. It'll tell you exactly how that has happened. So matches are going sent up to SquashLevels. SquashLevels recalculates everyone's level and attaches the New Zealand grade to them and sends it back down to MySquash. And that's where you log into MySquash. You can see the New Zealand grading list. You can see your grade, your level, your 12-month match history, and you can manage your profile in there. The information from there, the grading information, they're sent back into iSquash so that when you're entering a tournament or viewing your interclub team, your level there is kept up to date as well, so that when tournaments are being seeded, everything is in sync. So 3 systems there that are all working together. We've had a few questions around the timeframes for the updates. So we are trying to speed this up a little bit, and that is from basically when the results go into iSquash to showing back up into MySquash in your match history. So at the moment, SquashLevels picks up the results daily from iSquash at around 4 p.m. So iSquash has to batch together all those matches, say, yes, these will be played, and SquashLevels picks those up and processes them. Each morning at around 3 a.m, MySquash then does an update, receives everyone's new level and updates your grade if they need to. So this is the little, when you go into MySquash, you've got you go into your name, it's got your name, you've got your grade, your code, and your level. Those are updated every day. And then every 14 days at the moment, there is a full match history updated in MySquash. So you may see that if you go into MySquash, the match history, the levels may be slightly different to what SquashLevels is showing. Because SquashLevels is calibrating each day, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. But it's 14 days that those are updated again into MySquash. So there can be a little bit of a discrepancy between what you see in MySquash and SquashLevels, but that top part there is updated every day, which is where the grading list is formed from. So just quickly, what does it look like for next year? Obviously, this year is a little bit messy having 2 different systems, but from next year, everything will be accessed through MySquash. So we're rebuilding the iSquash as a competition-only platform. It'll all be single sign-on. So you'll sign into MySquash, you'll see a competitions tab, and you go into that. So you'll have your grading list, you'll have your match history, you'll be able to manage your profile, and then access the competition module with tournaments into club, as well as some new casual competition features that we're adding in there as well. So those results all go through back to SquashLevels, who do the calculations, and then they'll send back everyone's rating or new level and their grade as well. So yeah, how did we get to here? There's been a lot of work sort of going on, particularly in the sort of the last 6 months. We've done a lot of the mapping across from our old grading system to the new one. So we sent SquashLevels 1.4 million results from iSquash over the last 14 years. So as much data as they could have, and all of that helps to know what the behaviours are of New Zealand players in the matches that they've had against each other. We worked through some new grading bands. So yes, we still have our alphanumeric grades from A down to F and the J grade as well. So we mapped these against the current distribution to try and keep it as similar as possible to what we had last year under the old grading system. However, there was a decision made there was a bottleneck at men's C grade. A third of all men's graded players were stuck in C grade because of the change in points there. So that has been spread a little bit down into D grade, just to make it a little bit more even across all those grades. So 31st of January, MySquash was launched with our new grading system went live. Hopefully everyone here has had their welcome emails and set up their MySquash account. So we sent out about 18,000 of those, about 12,000 were graded players. We've had 7,300 MySquash accounts activated so far. So still a little bit to go, but yeah, great to see the uptake on those currently. And I'm sure once tournaments and interclub really get running, we'll see a lot more of those activated. There are reduced functions in iSquash. Obviously, there's no grading list in there anymore. It really is just a competitions platform. As I said, to view tournaments, clubs still run their tournaments through there. Districts will still manage their interclub competitions through there. but it is just for competitions only. As mentioned, once again, SquashLevels is the other system. So if you do want to use that, if you're really interested about how the results are being calculated, there is a free 3-month gold trial available for players, and there is a discount as well if you want to carry on and pay an annual subscription for that, which is discounted for Squash New Zealand players. Obviously, when a new system's in place, there's a lot of monitoring that goes on just to make sure it's doing what it's expected to. So we are checking how these live results are impacting players' levels, and we are getting a lot of feedback, which we're following up on just to see if it is behaving how we thought it would. And we are being in constant dialogue with SquashLevels. There's a few things that we've picked up already, which, are quite different, and maybe things that we can adjust a little bit, and maybe 1 or 2 things that just the way that the game is played here may be slightly different to overseas. So they're very open to working through those scenarios and how we can work through those. And as I mentioned, we're just sort of calling it iSquash Reborn. It's basically rebuilding iSquash from the ground up with new features for our competitive and casual players, which includes casual players being able to get a level, just not a grade, and also extra features for tournament controllers. And the plan is that will all be ready for early 2025. So we'll get into some FAQs now, and I'll hand over to Jackie from SquashLevels, who is the expert in these areas, and she can run through a few of these and a few scenarios as well, just to help sort of understand those level changes better for everyone. Jackie,
Hi everyone. So I'd say probably John and I have been working pretty closely on a lot of the queries and stuff that have been coming in, and probably the number one thing that we've been hearing from people is calling a level a point. I know that both Martin and John have talked about it now, and I know that that's what we're all used to with the points, where if you win a match, you get points. Let's put it in, to sort of explain really what a level is. It is a ratio. So say John is 100 and I'm 300, means I'm 3 times better than John. So 300, 100. If John is 1,000 and I'm 3,000, I'm also 3 times better than him. And it's saying 10,000 and 30,000. So it seems as though, you know, if someone was 20,000 points better than you, it would seem a significant amount, but actually relatively it's the same as someone that's 300 and 100. So it really is just a ratio. When you're thinking about like winning and gaining points and stuff, that totally needs to go out of, you know, sort of, you don't want to think about that at all anymore, because essentially you're going to go up based on how well you do against your opponent, based on what their level is. So it's not at all like it used to be. They're going to be adjusted after each match, and obviously the point scores are going to make a lot of difference, because at the moment, say the algorithm's predicting that if you're 300 and someone else is 100, for example, that the score would be X, Y, Z. If you beat that, then that means that you're going to go up. If you don't do as well as you're supposed to, then you're going to go down. So I'd say that's probably the most important thing to think of. It is completely mathematically minded as well, a level. So if you're twice as good as someone, you have twice the points. So next one. So I think this is probably the biggest concern that people have about whether they are supposed to be absolutely wasting their opponents every time they play. The answer is no. It actually depends on how close you are to someone. So if someone's slightly better than you, or you're slightly better than someone, of course you're supposed to have a much closer match. So maybe the score is going to be 3-2. If that person beats you, they're going to go up as they would have on the other system as well. However, we have got, can't remember how many exactly, but 1.4 million results from New Zealand. I think there's 4 million total results in SquashLevels. A lot of this behavioral modeling has come from looking at all of this data, which Richard has been looking at for, I think, about 12 years now. He realized after looking at a lot of results, that after a player got a certain amount better than someone, they'd start to go a little bit easier on them. So this behavioral model is incorporated into the algorithm. So essentially, if I'm around 3 times better than someone, I probably might start to go a little bit easier. So therefore it's factored into the algorithm. If I'm 10 times better than someone, which I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go on against someone, you know, if I'm an A grader, I'm playing a D grader, and go on there and absolutely wipe them off the court. The answer to this is you absolutely don't need to. If I played against a D grader and the score was 11-7, 11-8, 11-9, which would be a nice game for us both, I wouldn't change at all. And actually, maybe the D grader would get a little bit for their effort because they've obviously played really well against a higher ranked opponent. Next one. So the two of the FAQs that we were going to talk about is this calibration. So why has your grade changed now? So I think initially when you first went and had a look at your new grades, potentially you've moved up or down. I think 2/3 of the players have not changed and 1/3 of them have, which is a significant number. It has been, as a result, a little bit of the C grade being stretched out as well. But I think we also need to bear in mind that actually none of the grading points were taken into consideration at all when the levels were calculated. So they are completely based on the 1.4 million results. So we've gone back to 2008 when the first matches will have come in from New Zealand. And then all of the matches are calibrated against each other. So over the 14 years of results that we've had, and that basically the result that we have now with the grading list is from all of those results. So it's not at all based on, you know, how many points that you would have had before. John and I, and it's particularly John, of course, did a lot of work looking at making sure that we had enough people in all of the grades. Anyone that probably feels that they potentially are lower than they were could be for a number of reasons. It's normally maybe because you've not been playing as well lately. Richard always likes to say one thing, like sort of your mentality needs to change a little bit, that it's not how good you are, you know, like as in if you're for the world rankings, for example, you know, you get to world #1, that's how good you are. SquashLevels is your current form. It's how well you're playing at this moment. And so if you're like, oh, I've got a sore knee, I'm not playing well, that's actually being reflected. So if you go down slightly because you've not played well in a tournament, for example, I mean, that's actually what we would expect. And as you'll look over time, you can actually see, and you probably would be able to look back and go, oh yeah, no, I wasn't feeling well then. Oh, and I had a brilliant tournament then, and you would have gone back up again because we're actually measuring your current form. This I think is a lot more useful in terms of seeding tournaments and stuff, because we are, most of the time you're entering a tournament, you know, a couple of weeks before it started. I think it's less fair to be going off what your grading points would be from like a year ago, or, you know, if you haven't been playing. So I think it's really good that we've got it as current as we possibly can. In terms of the next FAQ, which is like it is about calibration as well, some of you may have noticed that your grade or level will be changing when you aren't even playing. So I think we need to think of it as like as a holistic system. So it is always relative to each other. So you're not going to go down if someone else hasn't gone down. The whole system is going to be calibrating, and we basically have pools of players, which is how we're working in New Zealand to keep the grades the same, if no matter if you're in Dunedin or Auckland or you know, anywhere else. They basically use these pools of players and make sure that we're checking that 1,000 player in each of these pools is the same. And so that is part of the calibration. It does have to adjust the levels regularly. It happens overnight. It shouldn't be a massive amount. I do realize that some people would be on the cusp of a grade, and that could be a little bit annoying or disheartening to see if you've gone up and down a little bit. But I do know that New Zealand Squash are taking this into consideration with, you know, all the graded events and stuff like that. So it's not going to be taken on, you know, one day where you've gone down to B1 or whatever the scenario might be. So
thanks, Jackie. We will open it up on the chat function now for questions. I know we have one already, which I'll delegate out to whether it's myself, John, or Jackie. But anyway, if you've got any sort of questions, now's the time, and I'll just go order from top down. So we'll get into it now. So Firstly, probably Jackie, I think. Why has there been a 3% cap applied to certain matches? So, for example, knows a player who beats top seed from the 5th seed and only got a 3% increase. He got 5.1% in the same draw from a much lower seeded player, and result was much closer to the expected result.
It is a really great question, and it's actually something that John was alluding to before, which we've been talking about with Richard, who's the developer of SquashLevels. So one of the different behaviors that we have in New Zealand, which actually we don't no one has anywhere else in the world, is that a lot of people take a 5-month gap, over the summer, and they won't play any competitive squash. Doesn't mean that they're not playing, with their friends at the club and stuff like that. SquashLevels, to create a current level, has to have seen a match recently, and 5 months would be considered not a recent enough. And we have something called level confidence, which means that if your level confidence is low, so you've not played a match for 6 months or something like that, after you play your first match back, you could potentially jump up or down quite significantly, because it's trying to quickly find your new level. As a result of that, which was something that Richard realized when he was trying to put all the results in, he put a cap on how much people could go up and down, because people genuinely were jumping up and down, significantly. And we had it when the first tournament came back. Someone went down 18%, genuinely had played 18% worse potentially, after having not played for 5 months, which we would expect as well. So we were just measuring that. The 3% cap was brought in to kind of adjust that, or kind of keep it, without, so that everyone's levels weren't jumping crazily and breaking the algorithm, as Richard said. But we realized that it's obviously not ideal. There's some people that would need to go up more quickly than that, particularly juniors, anyone that's been practicing, improving. So what Richard is working on, what we call our development site, before we put it in to the live site, is to somehow take off that cap and make it higher, so that it's not affecting these people. But we obviously don't want, we can't take off the cap for people going up and not take off the cap for people going down as such. So, but we are working on it, and he does think that he's found a solution, which is great.
Thanks, Jackie. So key message there, I think, for everyone is that, we've had 2 or 3 weeks of graded matches now, and we are looking at the trends. We've got to be careful because it's still early, but we do have the ability to sort of, I guess, tweak the algorithm for New Zealand or global as well from our findings. And we will, we are doing a lot of analysis at the moment. So just note that, if there are sort of swings or things that we changes, we are looking at that, and some things may change over time. This is probably, again, it's a similar sort of discussed theme, but I think it is worth again, Jackie. So there's lots of questions about, the disadvantage or thrashing their opponents. So there's a strong perception that the algorithm is being in favor of the lesser player. And so the perception is that the higher player still feels that they have to thrash their opponent. And results so far for the 2 or 3 weeks is a perception that's real. Do you want to comment on that again?
I think one thing we need to also bear in mind is, again, most people haven't had results. So I do think that these the percentage changes for these initial tournament matches will be probably not typical. Once Richard he's basically going to try and make it that in New Zealand, anyone that's not played for 5 months, he's going to damp those matches a lot more, so they won't be having these big changes. I would say it doesn't favor the higher ranked person more. I think it's trying to factor in both the players, but I'd say if anything, it is favoring them a little bit, because it's giving them the ability to play down quite significantly. So an example, I'm 3,800 or something. Richard is 700. I'm 5 times better than him. So I would be expected to beat him pretty comfortably, 11-2, 11-3, something like that. I can play Richard and it can be 12-10, as long as I beat him 3-love, 12-10, 11-9, 11-9, which is, a lot, he's getting a lot more points than he should. And I'm not actually going to be affected by that. So I think it actually is playing in favor, because I actually could play that badly and it's not going to ding me, basically.
Yeah, and note that there are different weightings on different matches. So if you're playing a tournament, then that is the highest weighting, and that's a lot more real, I guess, versus interclub is more dampened. And so, there's less of a change. And then if we do go even to casual or club-based, that's even weaker. So that's another sort of dial that can sort of be looked at moving as well if there are sort of regions or areas where there's a lot of mismatches going on. I mean, we can't do it for regions, but it does allow us to really analyse the trends in New Zealand. The next one, maybe it's for you, John, I think. Going to keep you on your toes as well about Super Champ. So not precisely sure what the word split means, but has there been, what's our thinking in regards to grading will be split for things like Super Champ grades? So I guess we have put quite a lot of thought into the rules of Super Champs, noting that it's a little bit more dynamic. What have we done and what are we analysing or checking?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess we'll obviously still have grades exactly the same as we had last year. Basically, we are still going to do a grading list cutoff date like we have done, which will be early June, I believe. But we will monitor it and we will take some snapshots for a couple of weeks before that as well. As Jackie said before, we don't want someone who's been in C grade the whole time, who's just been calibrated up without playing a match and pops up to B grade the day before the cutoff list and all of a sudden isn't able to play. So we will look at those, and as I said, we will take a few snapshots so we can go back and look at what someone's level has been. But other than that, I mean, grades are still the same. Not much else has changed. We did look at a lot of different options in terms of whether you can average it out, but in terms of giving things simple for everyone, yeah, mostly as is for this year.
Another one for you, John. So I'm just going top down, so it's a bit random who's getting the questions. But in regards to sort of exporting, so noting that calibration does happen and people moving up and down, and particularly for districts or clubs, when they want to sort of look at their players in a spreadsheet, what's the ability to sort of export in a moment in time when we're sort of setting out teams or seedings, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. So unfortunately, clubs can't do this at the moment, but districts and we can, obviously. So I'd suggest to just contact your district administrator who can easily export from the grading list for your club. We are looking at how we can make it available for club admins next year. The way that it is set up in Frello, it's sort of a subset out of the player profile. So there are some sort of permission issues if we sort of left it open for everyone. So we're just working through that, but it is easy enough for districts to run, so they can do an export if you need one quickly.
Yeah, we are informing all the district administrators, so contacting your local district administrator is a good source of info as well. Jackie, just an example, and I think you'll be able to answer, but in a recent tournament, high C2 lost for a B2 and moved down further than when that same C2 lost to a low C1. What do you say to them when they question that?
To be honest, it makes it a lot easier if I can actually look at the specific example, because I'd say most likely the reason will be that that first match will have been really low confidence, so they might have dropped down. In the second match, they've already dropped or gained, whichever way around it was for the player. In the second match, they're a lot more, the confidence level's gone up. So we know that actually, they are playing a little bit more like this because we've got a match from them. So they've already made the move down, because it's not a grading point. It's not like lose, 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 win, win, win. It's like, actually, okay, no, this is about the right level that they're playing at. They could then play a C2 or a B2 and not move at all because we've got the right level, or the system's confident that they do.
Yeah. Okay. The next one is a long sort of statement, but again, it does really summarize a lot of concern, and I guess it's that perception of entering a tournament at a top seed and worrying about sort of going backwards, and there is a fear that that less people are going to sort of enter tournaments or these sanctioned or graded sort of games because of the fear of sort of going backwards.
So I had a look on the old grading list to just kind of make it clear in my mind about, so if you were a B1 and someone was 300 points below but still a B1, in the old grading list, you wouldn't have moved if you'd beat them in a match. You only had something to lose against that person, right? Because you wouldn't have gone up. So actually, like, I don't think that the mentality is that different. Like, I hope that most people are playing squash because they love playing. if we're talking about two people that are B1 on SquashLevels, you've always got something to gain against someone that would be that close to you, because you could just play super well and they might only get a few points against you, for example, and you're going to go up from that. And also you might play someone that's a lot lower than you, and you're probably a little bit protected, as we've said, being allowed to play down a little bit if you were playing maybe a C or D grader, for example, in the early rounds.
I mean, it's a really good system, and again, my belief, and again, the results, particularly for juniors in this example, we're concerned about the juniors because it's based on form. So if they are playing better squash, noting that they're going hard and they're playing as well as they can in competitions, they will sort of move up if they are getting better. I mean, that's what this system does really, really well. So rather than sort of being too concerned about specific matchups, but if you are playing better, this will reflect in your level increasing. Correct, Jackie? I mean, just not the expert here, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's always will be something to gain from matches that you play.
The next one, sorry, I'm not as well read. So on this one's possibly a John one. So noting that we've got 14 years of data to get the current grading, was there a consideration or allowance for the fact that there was no idea what this would be coming down the line, so potentially results are not as accurate as they should be? So so if a result sheet lost the result and put 11 love, 11 love, 11 love, is that impact allowed for? So a couple of points there, but yeah, I'll let you comment to that.
Yeah, Jackie can probably tail onto this as well, but I mean, basically, as we pointed out, this is measuring your current playing level. So anything that you've played in the 13 years prior to last year probably have very little impact on what your level is currently. So all those results that were put in as 11 love, 11 love, 11 love have probably got no impact at all. It would have just taken it as a 3-0 match result and would have calculated it based on that. But yeah, as I said, it is current, so your level is heavily weighted towards your last 4 or 5 matches. So yeah, it's not having a huge impact overall. You're right, Jackie?
Jackie,
Yeah.
is 11 love, 11 love, 11 love?
I mean, ideally, you are going to put in the points scores because it makes a big difference. If they just put a 3 love score in, even without the 11 love, it is only going to take an average of what the score would be if you were playing against someone and you beat them 3 love. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's a wide range because obviously 11-1 and 12-10, 12-10, 12-10 is significantly different in terms of the level. So yeah, I think the more that people can get used to it, the more they'll see that it will have an effect as well.
I'll just add to that as well. So going forward, it's been made very clear to everyone running tournaments that the full scores have to be entered. We get an error come through if they haven't been done, so we can follow up on them. But it's been made clear that that's critical. And this even goes to interclub captains. If you're putting your interclub results in at the end of the night, make sure that the full game scores are in there because it can impact it going forward.
Okay, I'll rapid fire. So we'll keep going till 7 or we run out of questions. This one for you, John, I think. So iSquash used to be able to sort of follow the players. SquashLevels can do that, but not currently in MySquash.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we've got a list of features that would like added for the next round when we release it again at the start of next year, and this is on that list. So we're certainly looking at it.
Specific question, Jackie. Level of 2,300 versus a 1,350 player. The higher grade won 3 love, all tight games, but still higher graded player lost points after winning 3 love. Is this to do with a timeout?
Potentially, yes. I'd have to look on the specific one as well. But equally, so that's someone that's twice as good as the other person nearly. So if you calculate between that, so the predicted score would probably be about 11-5, 11-6, 11-5. So if they were really close, potentially that lower ranked person actually would have gone up a little bit because they've actually performed better than they should have. And the other person, but I mean, in a scenario like that, the change would be not a lot. So you'd see those percentages, they're probably around 1-point-something%, which is not a lot. As I alluded to before, you could change up to, sort of 10% in a match, especially if you've not played for a long time. So that's probably what happened there.
Thank you. Opening up to either of you. This is again another sort of common feedback is that when we mapped, a number of people did drop down. So the question was players who were on iSquash graded points who were similar, some were lower than others in the new mapping, and it could be, you know, 400 level difference, not point level, level difference, or even a half grade. So there's like a half grade change for people who are very similar, which can be demotivating. So why was that, and yeah, what are we thinking?
I'd say that the most important thing to think of is it's not taken into consideration at all what your grade was or what your points were before. It didn't even know what they were, to be honest, when it was calculating it. And I think, as you've already discussed before, and which everyone knew was an issue, there would have been people that were in various places around New Zealand that had this exactly the same grade, which you'd assume that they were the same level. But based on their match results, they're actually not. So it is unfortunate. So I went down loads as well when I had loads of results in, because I'm getting worse. It is unfortunate when you do go down or you're not playing well. But equally, I think the good thing is that you can go back up very quickly too. And yeah, so it's not actually relevant at all, really, what someone was before and what they are now. It's just based on the match result. And I would say one thing as well, which I think once a few matches have been, you know, a few tournaments have been gone, we will see people's levels sort of level out a bit as such, because let's not forget there'd be plenty of people that would have played matches before and which would have counted towards their level, where they didn't know that it made a difference if they went to 5 with someone, for example, and they might have just been having a run around and gone to 5 with someone, which maybe now they wouldn't do because it would impact their level. So I think that could be a scenario that has happened.
Yeah. And I think, don't forget that, you know, one of the problems we had was the inequality of our point system. So it was not necessarily an accurate representation of playing level, you know, which this one is. So even though you might have been on the same points, you may not have been playing to the same level. And note Jackie's point is that after a few games that will adjust, you know, relative to others, so that playing form will level out in time. I haven't pre-read this one, so I'll just read it. I don't believe the winner of a match should ever go down. It is possible for both players to go up. I couldn't see any results where that would be the case, but going down after a win doesn't motivate anyone. So it's more of a statement, really. So this isn't based on outcome. This is based on playing form, and it is a cultural sort of shift in what we've ever had before. So I think that's a acknowledgement. But the question, I think there is a question mark. Is it possible for both players to go up and both players to go down after a match, Jackie?
No, there shouldn't be. There could be no movement by one player and one person going up or down, but it should always be, because essentially we've got the algorithm predicting a certain, you know, score or something like that. And if it goes, you know, it might be like, oh, so and so won 28% more points. How does the system divide that between the two players? So that's what it's always essentially trying to do. So it normally would be a little bit down and a little bit up for most players.
Yeah.
I was just going to say quickly on the winning and losing, like you said, I think it is a bit of a change in mentality, because the squash level is actually, we're just measuring it. So it is a massive difference. If I'm supposed to beat someone 11 love, and we go to 5, I've clearly not played at my level, you know. So I think it is really good that that's reflected. However, I might still win. And I think going through to semi-finals, finals of tournaments, that's the motivation. So it's two separate things. Your level and whether I win matches, I think is actually two separate things.
Yeah. No, only a couple more. If we run out of questions, then we'll end, but still further time for you to make any sort of questions in the chat, but we've got 2 to go at the moment. So from John, this is for you, from My Squash administration sort of rights, being able to sort of get more access, entering people into grading, etc. What's current and what's time frame for change?
Well, everything's in iSquash now, so everything that clubs did to manage their members grading is still in iSquash at the moment. So yeah, there's no change there. We are rebuilding iSquash, so clubs will still have the ability to manage their players' gradings, but think we just need to remember my squash is not a club management system. It's not for clubs to manage their members in there. It's a Squash New Zealand account to manage the grading list and integrate with these other resources and benefits for players like the grading list and the competitions. So clubs can have their own fallow account to manage all their clubs through that. But in terms of managing the club, it's all in iSquash at the moment, and that will all sort of move over to the new iSquash as well.
Yeah, I missed the point, or I wasn't clear. So again, if someone's been inactive over the last year and been sort of provided with a level versus someone who's been really, really active, and again, there's a bit of a difference. How is that sort of mapped?
So we have actually been making some manual adjustments. Normally John will send it to me, or sometimes the districts have been sending it directly to me as well, when they know there was an example of a player who hadn't played for like 6 years or something, had come back and was playing significantly worse or better. I can't remember which one. When that happens, we just make the manual change based on their results, because it can be backdated too. So they could have played a tournament where they were 6,000 and we realize actually they're only 2,000 or something. And then anyone that played them will, we'll go back, change their level before the tournament started, and then they will no longer be dinged or get to all of these points for being someone that actually isn't playing at that high level anymore.
Yeah. The last one I've got, again, is a similar theme. Winners go down. So that is really tough for the New Zealand community to, that is a significant shift, and really acknowledge that sort of shift in the new system. So I guess it's just comments again from everyone in regards to you win, you come off the court, and then your level could go down. So what do parents or coaches or self-counselling required when that happens? What's the feedback?
I personally think for juniors particularly, like, this system is great, because we see it a lot with juniors. They play against someone that's significantly better than them. They think they've not got a chance. They are not going to be fighting for every point on there because they don't think that they've got a chance of winning. With this system, they are, they basically could get something from just getting a few more points against the player, which I think is a really good attitude to be having. And by the same token, the better player, they're going on there and they're knowing that they're going to have to put their best game on against maybe another up and coming junior as well, which is, we've been in that position too. So I think, really trying to play your best and get as many points as you can every time you step on court is probably the most crucial thing that we can teach them.
And reinforce his point, this system is so much better for junior development, because you will get faster in the progression and levels than what you were in the points. So it's a lot more reflective, and generally juniors do get faster, a lot faster than seniors and definitely masters. And that will be reflective. So yes, in that moment in time, it might be demotivating, I guess, although you've won, right? And then you've made the semi-final and you've won. But overall, if most juniors will always continuously get better, and so over a period of time, that level will progressively increase and be a really accurate reflection of how they're getting better. The old system didn't do that as well. So
I think just talking about this as well, having done a lot of work in the junior space, it did come up a lot that the old J grade system, and I'm not sure what level we're talking about here, but it can just be a disadvantage as well if people are focusing solely on the grading list. Like, they want a match, cool, that's the main thing that you want to get out of a match. And we want juniors, they really should be focusing on those increase in skills and stuff, because everyone can get better as a group, and we want everyone to get better and show it. But to focus solely on a squash level, once they start getting up the grades, then it's a great tool to see that. But I think starting out, just having lesser focus on this for them to enjoy the game and go out and play their best, and the results will speak for themselves. I think, just what they do on the court is far more important than, what an algorithm tells them afterwards.
John, a question for my squashers. Someone enters a tournament and they have no level assigned. Why is that? Is that because they haven't registered for my squash?
Yeah, something's gone wrong. Like, they were a suspended member in iSquash, but they didn't have their code removed before that happened, and the clubs reactivated them and they've popped back up. So they won't have had a MySquash. They need to probably contact their district administrator to sort that out, but they will need to set up a MySquash account and get that all fixed up. no one should be entering a tournament without a level there.
Jackie, I'll go to the comments second to last. Have a look at it. I'll give you a moment just to analyze that specific question to respond. So I'll ask another one, which John and I will sort of answer. So the last question here, John, at the moment is, did we imply that interclub games and in tournaments rate differently in the new squash levels? So this is weightings, John.
Yeah, correct. So, and this is based on what SquashLevels have seen from, once again, millions of matches from different types of competitions around the world. So tournaments are weighted at 100%, and the club games are weighted at 75%. And next year as well, when we have these casual competitions available, you'll be able to sort of run box leagues and business house and those sort of things and enter results, and they'll be weighted at 40%, I think. So yeah, this is some more flexibility that the system gives us as well to sort of weight things differently.
Nice. So I'll give Jackie a couple of moments. So we're sort of with one question to go. Got no more questions. So this is probably the last call of questions on the chat. Noting that we will finish at 7 o'clock as a hard deadline, if not before. So so last chance. Jackie, have you had enough time on this one? I'm not sure if I read it out, but
right now. What it said. Sometimes it can be just that the match has been excluded as well, which I don't think this one has.
And John, if there is an odd result, right? So let's say this example is, what's going on here? I've tried to understand it, I get it, but this just seems out. What do people do?
Best thing, use a 3-month free trial. And SquashLevels, you can go in, you can find the match, click on review. It's going to tell you absolutely everything you wanted to know about how that was calculated. I run into a lot of detail. So yeah, especially getting started, it's probably the most important thing anyone can do. Yeah.
That's what I'm just reading now, just to have a look to see what it said. So Mark played Todd, and the predicted score was exactly what the score was. So neither player changed because it was just expecting that was the result. So that's one of the reasons. I was just checking that sometimes matches can be excluded because it might have been an injury or appeared an injury, like if it was an 11 love, for example, which wasn't the case in this. So an 8-9-8 playing a 5-8-3, literally the score that we would expect would be around the 15-8, 15-10, 15-13, which is what it was.
Yeah. So follow up, John. I'm not sure if you answered it actually. Just why is interclub weighted slightly lower than competitions? So we had a bit of a discussion on this. So it's acknowledged, but yeah, what's our thinking?
Yeah, no, it is a good question. Sort of as we were working through this with SquashLevels, it was interesting to hear that, yeah, just they do have sort of these millions of results, and they do know that for interclub matches, people do not typically play at the same level as they would during a tournament. There's a lot of reasons for that. Yeah, could be depending on whether people have just come straight and jumped straight on a court, or they've been at school all day, they're a bit tired. Yeah, I don't know if you've got some more, Jackie, but yeah, it was interesting to find people do actually, and it may just be subconsciously, but people don't. But when we're talking about 75% versus 100, that's not a huge difference. I don't think.
And the percentage that each player would go up and down would be still relative. Like, so it might be a little bit less for both players, but it would still be the same amount relatively for each player. It's just we damped at 75% as opposed to 100.
And we did do a little bit of sort of surveys out there, and it is slightly different for different communities. But there's definitely a trend that those that enter tournaments do play harder than interclub. We got that. That's not always the case. So we do acknowledge that. We heard otherwise, but there is a heavy. So again, it's something we can adjust in years, isn't it, John? But at the moment, that's what we're trying this year. I'm going to put a cap on questions now, but there's still 3 to go, so no more. So I'll finish with the last one we've got here. So thank you, but let's finish off. So again, this one's probably a repeated one, Jackie, but it does really represent the feeling out there, I think. And again, it's a rural situation where there is a mismatch. You've got a newbie coming on board with an E-grader that can obviously play. And again, that fear that you have to thrash someone who's new, giving them a negative sort of experience. the level of penalty for that?
I am interested that, because I don't think I would want to play someone that was significantly better than me and have them give me 2 games. That's just me personally. I think having a really nice run around, having a laugh, letting the person get a whole load of points, giving them loads of serves, I think that is going to be enjoyable for them. Don't think they're going to think they're going to beat an experienced player that's been playing for many years if they're a newbie. And in terms of them getting their level as well, I think that the club will be assigning it based on matches that they've played against other people, so they may well be F grade. At the end of the day, I think people can do what they want when they're playing, of course, but I don't think you necessarily have to give someone 2 games for them to enjoy it. I think the rallies are the most important thing for someone that's new to squash to, get something out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. The next one's a statement, but again, it reinforces, get to SquashLevels, have a bit of a play. It's free for 3 months at gold level. The review function is quite useful to understand how the calculations were done for the match. So I think, we are encouraging people to go into SquashLevels and use that. So John, one for you in regards to defaults, what happens there? So it turned out some games were entered as defaults not played. Will these be avoided in the future so someone's stats aren't affected due to poor entering? Example could be the 4th player on a women's interclub, for example.
Yeah, so depending how they're entered, if they're entered as not played, then they won't get sent through to SquashLevels. They'll exclude those. I think those ones there. So in some instances, like if there's a match that's been defaulted, it will show up, but it will show on SquashLevels that neither player made any change. So yeah, it may show up and it may count towards your win percentage or something in my squash, but it's having no impact on your level or your grade after that. So yeah, matches are all sorted at the points of entry, and iSquash before they get sent to make sure that whether they should have an impact on players' levels or not.
And that one's an interesting one. What's interclub, what's competitions? So, how do we define what's a competition versus interclub, John?
At the moment, and obviously we're building out more features and functions next year, but at the moment it's essentially anything that's entered through the interclub module versus something that's entered into the tournament module.
Gosh, well, that's clear.
Yep.
Excellent. That's a wrap up.